Welcome to the Writer Groupie podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.kimsmithauthor.com. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. Hi everyone, and welcome to Writer Groupie podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, and this is our interview with Kathryn Sullivan. Kathryn's a young adult science fiction and fantasy author who's won many awards and acclaim. She's been out there writing for a very long time. Kathryn and I met at Mid-South Con this year at the swag table. Now, you guys do not discount the swag table because you will never know who you'll meet as they're putting out their bookmarks or their pins. And Kathryn is a pin person. We may talk about that. And then I ran into her again at Imaginarium a few months ago, and I booked her for the show. And I'm so excited to have you on the show tonight, Kathryn. I thank you for coming. Tell us about your writing journey and how you came to get Search and Rescue done.
Thank you for inviting me. My writing journey, I started writing when I was 14. I'd read all my dad's collection of science fiction fantasy in the house and decided, well, I could do this too. So I started, this is back in the days of typewriters. So I taught myself how to type and started writing my stories. The first one I wrote, an early version of The Crystal Throne. That was about the first one I really continued on with, and I kept sending it out and getting rejects and rewriting it and sending it out again. And I'm a poster child for being persistent because it took me 30 years to find a publisher. In the meantime, I was been writing short stories and sending those out and getting them published in some fantasy magazines, some fanzines. And I ran across one e-zine that were going to branch out into longer stuff. And at that point, they basically said, we really like your stuff. Have you got anything longer? So I sent them Crystal Throne. And I'd always been really happy with this one. And I'm glad I was persistent because when it did get published, it won an award for the best fantasy that year.
Wow. That's awesome. And that was an epic
Epic ebook award. Well, Eppies at that point. That's what it was called.
Right. And that the Eppies have, I guess, in the last few years changed names.
Yes. They found another organization that had been using the same word Epi. And since they were older, the Epic had to change their name for their award. So it's now Epic Ebook Awards.
And so that book at that time took the Epi that year, and that kind of like propelled you onto this writing journey. And you just, I was looking on your site, and you've won all kinds of awards. You've had, you've had short stuff printed, long stuff printed. I was just amazed. Do you have time to do anything else?
Well, I'm retired now, so I have time to keep writing and just basically concentrate on that. When the leaves aren't falling and I have to rake the yard. But other than that.
Well, tell us. So the story that you're showing us tonight is Search and Rescue.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And let me get it closer here. I got it up.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, because
okay.
Amber Quill, which the publisher is publishing, also does the covers for short stories. If they're putting it on the website.
Now I'm going to put the cover art on the website, the blog post that's going to accompany this interview, so you guys can get a good look at it. It's a great cover. So tell us about Search and Rescue. How did this story come to be?
Back in 2009, FenCon asked me to write a short story for their program book, because they also have, when they do their program book, they not only have their pocket program, which has all the sketches, they also have short fantasy pieces. Well, I watch bird nests. I watch all the nest cams, the falcon nest, the owl nests, the bald eagle nest, and I just had a short story in mind, and I just wrote it from the point of view of one of the wildlife rescue people who finds something odd when she goes to retrieve a fallen eaglet.
Oh, wow.
And then I've been thinking about so that story was in the program book. And I've been thinking about that story for a long time, and I finally figured out the other half of the story. So that story was expanded, and now Amber Quill published it separately first on their website, and then they have it available for Kindle, Nook, and Kobo.
Wow.
So you can buy that separately. So that one I've also got because the Epi Awards right now, the contest was open, and I was able to submit that for Short Works.
Well, congratulations. That's just
what
awesome. I can't wait to find out whether you win this year. Yay!
Yeah.
You know, that's just exciting. And I know that I'm going to have viewers watching this video and listening to the podcast who are going to want to know, how do you go from writing a short story to writing a novel? Or how do you go from writing a novel to writing a short story? Is it like having two separate brains?
I don't know. I've got some friends who can only write short, and I've got some friends who can only write long. I've always been able to do one or the other. The story usually tells me whether it's going to be short and long. I've got a couple of really, really short pieces that are really great when I've got a really fast read at a science fiction convention, because they're only about 5 minutes long. And then some of the other ones, they're novellus length, or usually if I'm asked to pitch for an anthology, they'll give me what length they want, and I can write that length.
So it's kind of like the market kind of rules the length of the story. Because if you were like looking at an e-zine, say, and they had a specific word count that they would accept, and sometimes even like online sites, like flash fiction can only be a certain length. And so if you're trying to find a piece or write a piece to fit in a specific niche that has a specific word count, that's going to guide you a lot on what you do.
Yeah, because a couple of the anthologies I got asked to write for, they just had a particular word length, and the story just managed to fit that way.
Have you ever had anything already written and then have an opportunity come along and you're like, oh, I know I got something that'll work for that?
I've had that happen too.
That happened to me with Seventh Star Press's anthology, The Tales of the Seelie and Unseelie Court, the Dark and Light Fae. And I already had a short story written that was perfect for what they were looking for. And so I submitted it, and I got some pointers back from the editor. Said he wanted it, make these changes. So I did, and voila, it was in that anthology. And I was really excited to know that I already had something. That's a big deal.
Oh, yes. It takes much less time to edit it down.
Oh, yeah.
Made it from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that a lot of people don't realize that, especially aspiring authors, when you get busy to writing and you're just putting stories in your notebook and you don't know what you're ever going to do with them, don't throw them away. You may get an invite to put them in an anthology, or you may decide to write a collection of short stories, which I just had my own collection of short fiction, weird stuff. It's like totally bizarro. That just came out, called The Dread Room, and it's out there available for you to buy for Halloween. If you're interested, go and get it. It's at Amazon. Kathryn, so, it takes a lot of time to write anything these days. But for me, writing YA is especially tricky because, the market for YA today, it's not like it used to be. Like we were talking about before the show, the tween market and the YA market, they're not necessarily the same thing anymore. And so I'm curious to know, when you write something today, how do you make it resonate with the youth of today?
It depends. If you're setting it in today, then you do want to make it resonate. But if you are writing like what I'm doing right now is a colony story set in the far future, it's like, I've got to figure out what's going to be the in fashions at that time. What's going to be the slang at that time. So I can't really make it resonate too much with us.
That's true. That's a good point.
And lengths and ages change, because when I first wrote The Crystal Throne, this was before Harry Potter Book 5. So everybody was telling me this is too big to be a YA. It's only 200 and some odd pages. So before Harry Potter book 5, you could get away with saying, oh, no, it's got to be a lot shorter. Then the other thing that came up is that the age lengths have changed. Now, the kids in my book are 12 and 13. Well, that's really more middle grade nowadays.
It is.
Whereas it used to be 12 through 18 was YA. Now they've got the 12 through, I think it's basically 10 to 12 is middle grade. And then you've got 13 to 18. And then you've got the new author, new adult. So the lengths change too.
They do, and it's like subject matter completely off the chart so far as what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's accepted, what's not accepted, and wow.
I've been on panels where they're saying, oh no, with YA, you can have anything. You can have sex, you can have bad language, you can have violence. Well, that's the upper limits of the YA. If you're doing more younger YA, then you still have to worry about the librarians, the parents, the grandparents are going to be reading that and saying, oh, no bad language, no sex in this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of parents and grandparents still read to their children, to their young children, and so we don't want to put all that, it's questionable material in a book that could be consumed by a child that's reading outside of their age group. Somebody that's 12, 13 very likely is reading into the teens.
They always read older.
Yeah, they do. And so we have to kind of think about that, and if it's going to be, too dark or too sexy or whatever, maybe moving on up to the new adult category. Okay, so we've ascertained that in your illustrious career of writing that you've won these awards. So now I'm curious to know, because I've talked to a couple of other people who are award winners. I want an award, and I want to know, how do I get an award? What do I do to get into these award ceremonies or contests or whatever?
Depends on what you're looking at. Now, back when I first started writing, ebook publishers were not acceptable to the Science Fiction Writers of America.
Oh,
they are finally now accepting it, but you have to be published with the right publisher. So if you're looking for a Hugo or you're looking for Nebula, probably not.
Not without being traditionally published.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you're not traditionally published, if you're not with the main New York publishers, probably not. But Epic and another number of other organizations also have awards. Epic is, the URL is epicorg.com, and that is an organization of e-published authors and publishers that they started around 2000 because they were getting tired. They were basically a spin-off of the Romance Writers of America, who at that time weren't accepting ebooks either. So we have romance writers, we've got erotica, we've got fantasy, science fiction. All these various authors form their own organization. And their books, for the Epic Awards, they basically are looking at what comes out in ebook form first.
So is it okay? Do they accept... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do they accept self-published authors,
Yes.
Or do you have to have a publisher per se?
No, the only qualification basically is you have to be published electronically.
Okay.
There's the guidelines at the website that it basically opens up every October, I think. They keep shifting it. And it's been the previous years from usually July to July.
Okay.
But check the publisher, check the website. Because they self-published, even traditionally published authors can submit too, but the ebook has to come out before the paper.
Okay. Yeah, y'all can find information about that at the Epic site. Epic site. And get all the details for those awards. Now, what about contests, Kathryn? Do you ever do any kind of contest entries to get, more recognition for your work?
Back when I first started writing, yes. Nowadays, it's just basically the Epic Awards, because you do have to pay because it's also going to be paying for the awards.
You could go broke quick if you did that, because I imagine, there's
the Independent Book Awards that usually comes out with the BEA organization. Mm-hmm. They usually have that coming out every year, and that's expensive.
Is that the IPPIE, the IPPI?
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard of that. I have a friend who actually won that one year, and
Excellent.
she's just awesome, and she writes mystery, and I'm gonna have to jack her up and get her busy writing some more. She kind of got away from her writing, and I need to get her back. I got to reel her back in. Come on, Murda, come on back. Okay, so a while ago you said something about being a panelist. Now I know because I've seen you at 2 different cons. Mm-hmm. And I went to your website, and at your website, you had on a blog lists. Every 5th blog post was, oh, and by the way, I'll be a panelist here. Oh, and by the way, I'll be a panelist here. And I'm thinking to myself, when does this woman ever stay at home? You're either writing something, publishing something, entering in a contest for an award, or entering an award contest, or you're at a con. Mm-hmm. Do you just do cons every month?
Well, except for January, February, because there's very few conventions in the Midwest in that weather. It's one way of promoting myself because as I'm published with a small press, there's not much chance of getting the word out. You can put out swag at a convention, but a lot of times people don't pay any attention unless they actually see you. So if I go to conventions, I at least get a little bit word of mouth that way. So if you're interested in going to convention, basically there's about 3 or 4 different convention sites, and they keep changing. I can send you the URLs if that helps any.
Okay, that'd be great.
Basically, look at the convention website, see if they will accept authors, and sometimes you have to pay membership. Sometimes if they accept you not as a guest, but because I was at the big level writers, but basically they might accept you as a panelist, in which case they might reimburse you then for the membership. And then you can submit panel ideas or see if somebody has already got panel ideas out there that you would be willing to talk on. It helps to have some expertise because when you actually write to them and say, hey, I'm interested in being a panelist at your convention, you basically list your qualifications as to why do you think that I could talk about this subject. Because there's a couple of Doctor Who conventions I go to, and I'm not one of the actors, I'm not one of the stars, but I have been writing about Doctor Who since the 80s. I've got an essay in Chicks Dig Time Lord, so I've got those qualifications.
You're a woman after my own heart. I love Doctor Who. Yes. I did not know anything about Doctor Who until the fall of 2014 when I was on a writer's retreat, and my good friend Jenny Brown decided she wanted to watch an episode of Doctor Who. I think it was probably the last of the season. And of course, being the last of the season, it ends on a hook. And so it hooked me. And so from that point forward, I'm like, holy cow, I got to start watching this show. Well, I went to Netflix and I realized there's a lot of Doctor Who episodes out there.
It's been 52 years now.
Oh my gosh.
And Came out in 1963.
And so I just started watching them. I wasn't a big fan of the classics, the really, really old ones.
It's different writing style. It was television style.
It was very, very pulpy. Just didn't appeal to me. So I moved forward until I found the first of the more modern episodes. Yeah. And holy cow, was I ever hooked. And this is like my guilty pleasure. Okay, you guys are getting this for free. When I'm really just knackered and don't feel like doing anything else for a night, I'm going to sit down with my Kindle, pull up Netflix and watch an episode of Doctor Who. And that just relaxes me and gets me, I'm okay to go to sleep then. So I just love Doctor Who. So we'll just have to plan on doing something together at a Mid-South Con for Doctor Who.
Okay. There's usually a panel there.
Yeah, and you know what? Here for the last few years, I haven't been able to make it because I've either been on a panel at that same time or I've wanted to go to another panel at that same time. So I'm just going to have to shove everything aside and make time for Doctor Who this year to come. So what other cons do you go to? I've got a list here of some that were listed on your site.
Because, the next 3 are going to be, for this year, be the Time Lord Fest in Tampa that I've been invited to. Conjurium, which is in Atlanta. This will be the first time I've gone to that one.
What's it called?
That's Conjurium, because it's going to be more magic. So it's Harry Potter, Narnia, a little bit of
Oh.
Doctor Who, blanking on the other shows. And I'll remember after as soon as we hang up. But
That's
it's
fun.
more magic.
Conjurium, and it's going to be in Atlanta.
Right.
Is this the first year for that?
No, this is the second year.
Okay.
But I was invited last year, but I had World Fantasy at the same weekend. So now they moved it to after Halloween. And then after that, it'll be Chicago TARDIS
Oh my
in the Chicago
gosh.
suburbs, where they're going to
You
have
guys.
Jenna Coleman.
Yeah, you guys. Oh. I think I saw that either on your website or on your Facebook page or somewhere, and I was like, oh, I wish I could go to that. That just looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's always Thanksgiving weekend in the Chicago suburbs, and it's a great Doctor Who convention.
Mm.
But
Okay,
other
well, since we
like-
know who your favorite sci-fi fantasy storyline is, I have a question for you, and that is, if you could sit down with any sci-fi fantasy author, living or dead, and have a chat, who would it be and why?
Because I've already had chats with some of the ones I wanted to be with. Probably James Smits, because he was one of the authors I was reading when I first decided I could write science fiction. He was one of the few authors back in the day who usually had female characters who were smart, who were not treated as token female.
Oh.
Oops, I just lost the screen. Yeah. But can you still see me?
I can still see you.
Okay, so I won't worry about me. And I would just like to hear from him as to why. Was he writing it more for a daughter, or was he actually thinking that enlightened back in that day? Because we're talking way back in the 50s, 40s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
He has a
interesting.
collection of science fiction
Okay,
and
so
fantasy.
give us a title of one of his books.
Agent of Vega, collection of short stories, and they had telepaths, they had star ranging adventure, they had an alien who struck me very much as kind of looking human, but like with cockatoo feathers.
Ah.
So yeah, I liked her. And then he also had Kelsey, who was she was in her teens, but she was pre-law, and she was able to contact these cat-like beings that were basically hiding from humans on this one planet. And it's just
Wow.
a wonderful series of books.
He would have written a really great episode for Doctor Who.
Oh man, would he ever have?
Okay, so, you
Probably,
know, I
There's
also
a lot
wanted
of other
to,
authors I would like to talk to. I've already have at convention, so it's like,
so, you write so many different things with long fiction and short fiction, and I know you've done articles. How many projects do you work on at a time?
2 or 3 until I am pressed for time and have to concentrate on the one. So right now I'm concentrating on a YA Colony Planet story, and I'm also trying to work on an Agents story. I've got Agents and Adepts, which was a collection of my short stories, and I've got a couple of interstellar agents in that one.
I see. So when you're working on more than one project at a time, are you writing more than one, or are you like writing on one, editing on one, just maybe brainstorming on one, or do you write all 3 at one time? How does that work?
Right now I'm brainstorming on one, and the other 2 I'm writing until I get stuck on one, and then I switch over to the other one.
I see.
So
This may explain why you're so prolific, is if you can work on 3 projects at a time and 2 of them actually being written, that probably explains that. You think?
could be, but I keep thinking I should be writing more, so
I'm telling you, if I just had, I always thought if I had more time, but heck, it's like, we all have the same amount of hours in a day. I guess it just depends on what we do with it.
Yeah, my problem is I was writing a lot more when I still was working at my job, which is weird, which is very weird. The one trouble when you retired is like all of a sudden you've got this bird who wants more attention, and oh, gee, the yard needs to be mowed or raked. Or, wait a minute. I got more done when I was working.
Yeah, well, maybe it's because we feel compressed. You know, we're working a job when we know we have to do that to make a living. And so we have to niche out time for our writing. And we really do force ourselves to get that time in. And then once we're retired or we're not working, I'm bad about this on the weekends myself. You know, you're like, I don't have anything to do. I got plenty of time. And the next thing you know, it's time to go to bed. The whole day is gone. And it's probably very similar when you're retired. Mm-hmm. You know, and before you know it, a whole week is gone. You're like, holy cow, where did the week go?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we are down to the last 5 minutes of the show, believe it or not. This has been so much fun. And I always like to ask my guests to give a piece of advice to an aspiring author. Because, you know, we all started out at the same place, and we can all use that bit of a boost, you know, to help us to the next level.
I'll give you 2 tips. First one is read. Read a lot. Read other genres. If you find something that really speaks to you, why does it speak to you? Because I read YA, I'm reading all sorts of different YA stories and middle grade stories and say, now, how did they handle this? Why is this first person story working really well and why is this other one not? Did they choose the wrong character? But if you know, you won't know your own voice and you won't know the tricks of the trade unless you see how other people do it. I mean, you could read all the how to write books, but you actually see it in practice and see what draws you in. Unless you actually see it in practice, it's all those words are not going to mean anything. The other one is be persistent. If you know you've got a good story, you know it's good, keep rewriting it, keep sending it out, but keep persisting. Don't just put it in a drawer and forget about it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one especially because, guys, it only takes one yes from a publisher and you're published. You know, it only takes one yes. And you might get a whole lot of no's, but just keep striving for that one yes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Kathryn, it has been so great to talk to you tonight. Why don't you tell everybody out there where to find you on the internet and where to find Search and Rescue?
Okay, several different places. My website is Kathryn Sullivan, that's Kathryn, Sullivan.com. I'm on Facebook at Kathryn Sullivan, Kathryn.Sullivan, and my author page is KathrynSullivan.author. And Search and Rescue can be found at Amazon. They can be found at amberquill.com. Also at Nook. I've got links to them off my website as well.
Do you have a blog at a separate location?
I write a monthly blog with a group of authors. We're called YA Authors You've Never Heard of. And
I know that's where I went, and I was cracking up at the title.
Because we are YA authors, it feels to us like nobody's ever heard of us, so we just basically are sharing a blog. And I write once a month, so I either write about conventions or how to write, how to find names, whatever strikes my fancy that month.
Yeah.
And Facebook link is YA Authors You've Never Heard of, and it'll go to the main.
Is that a group or a page?
It's I think it's a page, because the URL is a rather long one, so I can give you the link to put on the...
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
I'll have all the links and all the information on the blog post that accompanies this video, you guys. Well, Kathryn, what's coming up next? Have you got anything in the pipeline coming toward us?
Oh, just the one I'm working on right now. So... once it gets done, I will probably come back to you and say, hey, it's done. Do we want another interview?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to have you come back on at any time. It's been just a joy, and I'm excited that we ran into each other at that swag table. And now every time I go to Mid South Con and Imaginarium, and I'm sure there's going to be more because you seem like you're a real con lady, I'm going to run into you. We're going to have a great time. I'm looking forward to having a cup of coffee with you one day.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this edition of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit KimSmithAuthor.com.